All right, hey, we're going to be in Luke chapter 9 today, just kind of bringing you up to speed a little bit with the purpose of this, not to rehash where we've been, but to kind of bring you up to purpose. We're meandering, it's probably an old-fashioned word, but it works. We're meandering through the Gospels, looking for encounters with Jesus. Now, what we're trying to do is bypass the big things, right, and deal with more of those intimate conversations, intimate things that were taking place. And so the story we're looking at today on its face, I almost skipped over it because it's really one of the big deals, right? It's the feeding of the 5,000. And so it's easy to go, well, that's not really an intimate thing. But what I want to center on is the intimate conversation Jesus had with his disciples, because that's really more what this story is about than anything else. And so I want us to kind of see ourselves in some of this. If you remember 2 weeks ago, maybe we had Primjit, my friend from India here last week. What a great time just to be encouraged by him and to hear the stories of what's going on in India. But the week before that, we actually saw, I think it's the longest pointed sermon. I didn't preach a long time, but it was 16 points we looked at 2 weeks ago of Jesus' advice for your mission. If you remember, Jesus was sending out the 12, and so he gave very specific issues, which we didn't look at the specific issues of the fact that they were going to carry no purse, they were going to get no change of clothes, they were just going to wander through where they went, and they were going to share the gospel. And he told them there were several things, 16 things as a matter of fact, that they should pay attention to. They are fresh off of that journey. Now, some people say that could have been 2 to 3 months. We don't know. It could have been 6. Nobody knows how long that was. But that journey didn't just start there. It started a long time before that, and so we're tracking with your life and my life, right? Here's where it started. It started with him saying, hey, why don't you come and see, right? That's where it started for all of us. Any of us who are believers in Christ started with that invitation of like, hey, come and see. Now, we may not have had it shared with us that way. I'm not sure how you came to Christ, whether it was in a church or whether it was a grandparent or parent that led you there, or whether it was a camp or whatever it was. But at some point, you decided that you wanted to be a follower of Christ. Now, you may have put your toe in the water, and it may have taken you some years, and maybe you thought you were, and then you weren't, now you are, right? So there's those kind of things that take place. But at some point, we realized that I'm going to take that invitation. I'm going to come and see, right? That's kind of where we start. That's where it starts. The word disciple, which is what they're called now, he just changed their name right before this, or didn't change their name, gave them a different title, apostle, which meant sent one, because that's what he did, right? He sent them out. And that's what the term apostle means, a sent one. And so they were sent out into the world, and they came back with these incredible stories. And but it didn't start there. Like I said, it started with the invitation to come and see. It started with the fact that they were going to be his disciples. That word's kind of a stale, churchy kind of word that we've used. You know, we have discipleship classes and all of those things. And basically that's just a way of talking about like maybe more Bible study. But disciple means learner, but not necessarily in a classroom setting. And this is where I think the church is kind of messed up. We think a disciple means you sit in the class and you learn something. It's really not that. It's let's call it apprentice, and that may be a better term, right? Some of you maybe have been an apprentice. Some of us were drug into that, right? When my dad was working on cars, I didn't want to be his apprentice, but I had to, and my job was to hold the light. Most of us men in this room, that was our task, right? But you were learning while you were actually seeing things. There would be times he'd say, okay, now it's your turn. I don't know if your dad did that, but mine did. Usually when the work was hard or nasty, he'd go, okay, now you get under there, right? But I learned something. It was more of an apprenticeship that was taking place. And so when we think of the term disciple, if we would see it more like that, right? Now, make no mistake, this is what he's called you and me both into. It's like on-the-job training. Again, you may have not known that's what you signed up for when you came to Christ, but you don't have the privilege of sitting in the sidelines. He wants you to follow him, and usually where he follows you is going to be sometimes into trouble. Lots of times it's going to be an adventure, and lots of times you're going to feel like you're treading water in the process because he's trying to get you somewhere. And so what I want us to see in this story, that we have to be comfortable doing that. Now, they went out with really all they had on their person. They didn't take anything with them, but they did have the power of the Spirit, and they did have the truth that they had heard Jesus teach, right? And so I'm sure the different personalities came out in these journeys and they did it based upon that. Here's what I want you and me to understand about a lot of things. One is every one of us has a talent or an ability, right? I mean, if we just look in this room and I start saying, hey, what are you good at, right? If we're just taking inventory, your first blush is going to be nothing, or, well, I'm really good at this, or I really want to be good. But the reality is, if we were to slow down long enough, we would create a list. And in this room, there's going to be a lot of talent of things that people have done, things that you know, right? That you've learned. And so that's what we bring to the table. Our life experiences have given us talent and abilities. The second thing we have, as we're believers in Christ, is a spiritual gift, right? Unique. This is not a talent. This is not an ability. This is someone's phone just went off and it says, "Hey, beautiful, you got to, anyway, whatever." So if you didn't hear it, somebody's phone was talking to the whole room. So you have a talent and an ability. A spiritual gift is something different. It's supernatural. This is what that gift is. Like my mom had the supernatural ability to discern things. Usually the things you didn't want her to discern, she knew how to do that. And so she read my mail, right? My whole life, my mom did that, right? I have a spiritual gift of talking, not really. I have a spiritual gift of encouraging by taking truth and making it make sense to us, right? Now, I'm of the opinion we really have one super gift that God's given to us. You may have an opinion that you have more, and that's fine. I will not argue with you about that, but you have a supernatural spiritual gift. Now, if you've never tried it or experienced it, you may not know what it is, but you have it. That's a truth that we should know. And the third thing that's required is that we just practice it, right? That we should actually get in the game, not sit on the sideline. God doesn't have a first string, second string, third string. We're all players in this thing called life. And so this is where we're going. I just want us to see this, right? Because this is where we're going, and they knew that. They had just come off of this. And so it went from come and see to the reality that, hey, here's your task. I want you to be fishers of men. I think sometimes we lose sight of that fact. That we're here, we're here for several reasons, but if it was about just getting our little selves into heaven, then, well, as soon as we came to Christ, you would think he'd go, all right, you're gone, right? Come on. He's left us here for a reason. Because this world is dark, it's dead, and it's divisive, and it needs what we have, light, life, and love. This is why we're here, right? And so the way that happens is we need to understand that I am going to live a godly life, but I'm also going to share the truth of how I came to live that godly life, right? So we talk in terms of evangelism. Everybody freaks out because they think they got to go memorize the 4 spiritual laws or knock on somebody's door and have those awkward. You remember those? I was responsible for Tuesday night visitation as a 22-year-old at my home church. And so me and one other man would show up because nobody else wanted to go out. And the one man that I was with was a kind man and a quiet man. I should tell you that. And so we would get in his car, and we would go through Centerpoint, and I'm just raw honesty. I loved it when he couldn't find his way. Centerpoint's hard. It's not like, it doesn't lay out well. And that was our target area, and we couldn't find a place. I'm like, thank God, because I knew what was going to happen. We were going to knock on the door, and they were going to let us in, and then their TV's going to be blaring, and I'm going to be trying to figure out, because he's not going to do a thing. He's going to accept the sweet tea, and then that's it. And I had to figure out how to share the gospel. This is not what I'm talking about, okay? Now, I'm not saying that God doesn't call some of us to that, but it's not that. It's more of as we go and we have an opportunity, we should know that we're equipped. I have talents and abilities, and I have a spiritual gift. I can do this thing. And this is what we're going to see unfold here. So they were called to live the gospel, to share the gospel, and then be the gospel. That's where the interaction happens, right? We know that. We know that we should live the gospel, and most of us try to do that. Some of you don't do it as well as others, but I'm really bad at it, but we try. And then we can share the gospel if everything, all the stars line up. But what really happens is that if we live the gospel and we be the gospel actively by serving the least of these, it seems to be that's where God begins to do a lot of work. When we just get our eyes not down and in, but up and out, and we start looking at people, and we go, hey, I can help them with that, right? The people that have influenced my life are the ones who came alongside me and just kind of helped me out a little bit. I'm grateful for those people. And so this is what that is, and this is what it looks like. I know I've shared these stories before. Let me just kind of look. My younger days, I wasn't always the outgoing, Mr. Talkative guy that I am now. I was kind of in there. But, man, when you're in junior high and high school, you got all kind of things going on, right? You have self-esteem issues and all that, and it's just there. And when my youth pastor came to town, Rich Teeters, he was Rich Ryder of the ERC Traffic Copter, if you remember back in the day. He became our youth pastor. Man, he really turned his attention toward me and treated me like I was somebody. It was a little intimidating at first, but he was a cool guy. And so we'd go, he had this thing called the Volkswagen Thing. You remember that thing? Looked like a German, tank or something. Well, we would go off-roading in that, and he would ask me questions about life and want to know about, where I was spiritually. And he would ask me questions, and we'd let me off the hook because I don't know. He said, well, you need to figure this out, right? And so he did that. And then as I began to get older, he would say, hey, I'm going to the hospital. You want to go with me? And we would go visit people. And I remember clearly one of the times I did, a close friend of ours lost a niece, and actually some older friends in the church lost their grandson in a terrible automobile accident. And my first encounter in that hospital thing was being in that UAB elevator going up to see a couple who had just lost their child in a tragic accident. And I'm like, this is crazy, but I learned how he responded, and I learned what he said, and so I began to learn some things. And then he just threw me into Wednesday night church one time and said, hey, you're teaching Wednesday night. And I remember teaching, and I taught my heart out. I thought it was brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. We were talking about angels singing and all of that, and the place was packed, and I'm like, man, I did good. And one of the older men in the church came up and said, angels don't sing, don't you? And I thought, and I searched, and he's right. From a theological, I'm not saying they don't, I'm not, but they don't sing. I mean, you don't hear it in the scriptures where the word sing is used. Technically, I guess what he's saying. I'm like, when they say glory to God in the highest, I hear music. So I don't, but anyway, it kind of throws you back. But here's the thing. I kept figuring this thing out. My buddy Rich, he left and went to Colorado to start another church. But that thing that he had put in me to kind of learn and figure out, I still have it. I've been a learner ever since. And I'm just foolish enough I tried to quit ministry several times, and here I am, right? Because we're all learners at heart. And I guess this is what I want us to hear. Before we get to this story, I want us to hear that. Now, here's where we are. They've just finished that whirlwind thing, and they're back, and they're talking to Jesus, and he goes, man, you guys must be tired, right? And so he says, I'm reading several passages. You stay in Luke 9. But in Mark 6, he says this, and he said to them, hey, come away by yourselves with me to a lonely place, and let's rest for a while. There were many people coming and going, and they did not have time to eat. And so they went away in a boat to a lonely place. So he's like, hey, you guys are worn out. I'm like, yeah, man, woo. But we got some stories to tell. He goes, hey, come on, let's just get away. We'll get away, we'll eat, let's get in the boat, let's go across the shore. Well, what happened was everybody was waiting on Jesus. And so when they saw the boat leave, they knew he was heading to another place. And so they all rush around. And so by the time they get there, it's not a quiet, lonely place. And so there's a crowd there. And so that's the setup for kind of what's taking place. Now, when Jesus sees this, he says, let's get to it. He says, again, I'm going to read it in Mark. And the people saw them going, and many recognized them, and they ran together on foot from the cities and got there ahead of him. And when he went ashore, he saw a great multitude. Now, this is Jesus, right? He wanted to get away with his guys. But man, he's got that compassion. Listen to what it says. He saw a great multitude, and he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And so he began to teach them many things. You see what that is about Jesus? He's on mission. If we're trying to find somebody who's on mission, Peter's part-time on mission, right? Sometimes he's not, and sometimes he is, and it's kind of in between, whatever the way the wind blows, but not Jesus. He's always on mission. And so his mission, and then he knows, hey, I can disciple my 12, and at the same time, I can minister to these people. He's moved with compassion. This is what I love about Jesus. And this is the things that we have to begin to see. We can't have compassion for people if our eyes are always on ourselves. I'm learning this on such a regular basis. If it's all about us, we're never going to be we're going to miss the moments. We have to, look, cry all you want, do all you want, all that stuff in your home and all that, and have those pity parties and all of that. But when we walk out to the community, our eyes have to be up and out. It can't be about us as much as we want it to be. And I'm not saying there aren't times when we kind of share with each other, right? I'm not saying that. You get the point. I'm just saying to be a disciple means my eyes are up and out because I'm looking, because I have a mission. And this is what he's called us to. And so this is where they are. And so he says to them at some point in here that let's see where it says. Verse 12. And the day began to decline. Oh, so he starts teaching. Now, he says that they are sheep without shepherds. Earlier, he will mention to them that the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. That was what he said as he sent them out. And as they came back in, he said, you've learned something, haven't you? The fields are ripe for harvest. And so you and me, along with this compassion, have to see that Jesus just saw that. Hey, here's an opportunity to meet some people's needs. He's being the gospel, right? You understand that he's being the gospel. So he's going to teach them, because he says they're like shepherd without sheep. They go here in synagogue and they hear the Pharisees rant and rave about law and rules and legalism. There's no shepherd feeding them. There's a shepherd beating them constantly. And so he goes, man, I'm moved. These people need hope. These people, and so he's teaching. We don't know what he was teaching on that deal, but he was doing that. He's doing compassion. My mind's going everywhere when I'm seeing this because I see in pictures, right? But I think my first pastor, Bill Prince, Canadian guy, he used to always make this statement. He said, the problem with the church is that we sit, we soak, and we sour, right? What that means is, and this is true of every one of us in this room, we don't suffer for a lack of knowledge of the truth. We have been in this church and in other good churches long enough. We know how to sit and we know how to soak up truth. What we don't do is get active with it. And so what happens is we're just full of stuff and now we sour, right? We're just there and we're mad about everything. I'm not saying we are, I'm just saying, but that's the potential. And so the purpose is for us to actually get out and do it. Now, I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, so this is kind of where my mind is. I'm trying not to get all these things tangled, but I'm writing a book called All the Things. I've shared this with you before. The whole book is to talk about what we lost in the fall of man. We lost life and light and love. It was replaced by darkness and deadness and division, and we see it rampant in our country today. There's a void of truth. There's a void of unity, and it looks like a bunch of dead people walking around. Just, I see those zombie movies, man, with them with his scabs open and everything else because they're just dead, right? Now, he calls you and me back to light, life, and love. And that's an active thing. That means that I have to not just know light, I have to actually be it. I have to live it, right? There's an aggressive thing. Jesus actually means these things that he teaches in his scriptures about, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. He means us to do those things. He means us to find the least of these. He means us to forgive like he tells us. All of those things, he means it. It's a crazy thing that he wants us to do. He wants us to love our enemies and pray for them and bless them, right? But somehow we want to short circuit all that. But this is what he calls us to. I'm getting to the story. Just hang with me, okay? So, back to the story. Fresh off their trip. Come away to a lonely place, only when you get there, it ain't so lonely. And so there's a big crowd. They begin to work. Jesus is healing, and he's doing all the things. And then we get to Luke chapter 9. It says this, and the day began to decline, and the 12 came and said to him, send the multitude away, that they may go into the surrounding villages and countryside and find lodging and get something to eat. For here we are in a desolate place. Now, this is a great story. You got to be a little encouraged for the fact that the disciples are actually, their eyes are up and out. They've listened to Jesus on the mountainside and they're tired, but listen, they're more concerned with them. And so that's a good thing, right? They're like, hey, look, we got a problem here. That's powerful. That's a big step. I don't know if you know that or not. That's a big step. They're not just fighting about who's the greatest and arguing about all that stuff. Their eyes are up and out and they go, hey man, look, it's getting late. We need to send these people home. And then it says, but he said to them, you give them something to eat. Now, in John says, Jesus, therefore, lifting up his eyes and seeing the great multitudes coming, said to him, hey, Philip, where are we going to buy bread for these to eat? Right? So this is Jesus. They're like, man, we got a problem. We got a problem. And Jesus is like, hey, Philip, well, where are we going to buy some food? And this he was saying to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. This didn't catch Jesus off guard. He's always teaching, right? He's the teacher. Man, what are we going to do about this mess? Oh no! Should we hold hands and worry? What do you think we should do? Should we feed them? And they said to him, man, we got like 200 denarii. We're going to go buy bread? I don't think. They're thinking a little less, but at least they're thinking. And so this is what we find, right? And so they're like, okay, man, I don't know, what do we do? Jesus says, well, hey, go see what we got. So they find a little boy, right? You know this story. It's just crazy. Let's look at it. And they say, we have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fishes, unless perhaps we go and buy food for all these people. There were about 5,000 men, which means there's probably 20,000 people there. And he said to the disciples, have them recline to eat in groups. Now, there's several things about that story if we just think about it. That little boy, he's the only one out of 5,000. He's the only one that thought, hey, Mom, can we pack a lunch? Because that's all they found. I think there's something crazy about that. I think it's also crazy that the little boy's going, yeah, you can have my Happy Meal. I'm like, and the guy's like, we don't even need that. That's not enough. And Jesus is like, no, we can work with that. Can you imagine the conversation? What's going on in these disciples' heads? I got 5 loaves. I got 2 fish. And they're seeing a sea of people, right? This is what's going on. So Jesus says, put them in groups of 50. Are you following along? Put them in groups of 50. Now, if there are 5,000 men, that means there's 8 groups apiece if you do the math. But if we're talking about like 15, 20,000, it could be as much as each one had 24 groups of people in groups of 50. That's an outwhelming thing. Jesus takes the fish. Well, I'm going to give you some points in a minute. I just want you to understand. Jesus is going to take the fish and the loaves, and he's going to bless it. And a miracle begins to happen that I don't know how to figure out. Because they're coming to him, and he's breaking off the bread, and he's breaking off the fish, and I guess they're running out to take care of 50 and coming back. But this is a miracle. This is growing out of nothing. I don't know if when they get it, it's growing in their hands, and now they're hurrying, like, oh, this bread's getting big, and they start, because it just keeps multiplying. But get the picture of what's going on. It's kind of chaos in this serving moment, because things are happening that they don't know how to comprehend, and things are multiplying. And so if it's growing in their hands, you can imagine they start out with a little loaf, but it's getting bigger as they get there. So now they're running to each 50 group, trying to get enough of this stuff out, to feed everybody. And so here's the thing, though. So everybody's fed. And then, so I don't want to make much of 5 loaves, 2 fish. 20,000 people potentially. And then Jesus says, hey, let's go get the leftovers. The leftovers. 12 baskets full. Not 13, not 10, 12. Basket. We're not talking about a bread basket. We're not talking about a little picnic basket. These baskets were like this. Big baskets. They're going and picking it and bringing them all the way back. This is the story that we find ourselves in. And they took care of everything. Now, I don't even know how to really where we go. I think there's several things. One, we have to expect that God's going to, without knowing how he's going to meet those needs, we just got to do it and let him figure it out. I think we should always be amazed at the abundance of which God, I've seen it time and time again, where we didn't think there was anything and we realized, man, we had more than we needed. Three things have to happen, right? We have to believe that God can do things. We have to trust him by actually going at. It's one thing, and I've shared this story with you before. You know, it's an old story, but just listen to it. The guy in Niagara Falls got a rope strung across it, walks across, true story, walks across it, comes back, and everybody's, whoa! You know, he gets a wheelbarrow, rolls it over, rolls it back, whoa! Right? He says, hey, how many of y'all believe I can do this with somebody in there? Yeah! And then he says, okay, who's getting in, right? All of a sudden, nobody's like, I ain't getting in, right? Why? Because they believed but not trusted, right? And so the issue is Jesus like, hey, I want you to believe me and I want you to trust me, which means you have to take a step. You have to step. This is what he's calling us to. This truth is essential if we're going to have a vibrant ministry. And so let me just kind of conclude it with a couple of thoughts. You should take a resume, like I'm doing, of what do you have, right? This is fair. Take an inventory and say, what do I have? What talent do I bring? What gifts do I have? What place should I begin doing these things, right? And so I'm not trying not to talk about our life, but it's the only one I know. So we've been taking stock of what we offer, because when I came back from India, I decided I'm going to get more in the game. Right, I feel like I'm already in the game, but I want to get more in the game. So I went part-time to trade. This don't come. You guys know this. And so we've started a ministry. We resurrected a ministry called Be Refreshed, which the Lord gave me in 2005. So we're taking stock, and we go, we got this parenting thing and grandparenting thing figured out. So we have some kind of talent in that area. We're figuring it out, right? And then I realized that we're figuring out how to do church in a small sort of way. We do it here, we do the simple gatherings, and we do some other things, and there's kind of a hunger for that. I'm like, okay, we kind of are in the game in that sense. And so I've got this shepherding lane that I think I can help people with. And then because of Tracery and doing these culture things, I'm like, man, I think I could help other companies do what we're doing. I've learned a lot, and so I think I can figure this out. So we've got three little baskets, so to speak, that we can draw from and figure out how to do it. And so that's where we are. We're in the business now. We're just trying to figure that out. There's a podcast we put out today, this week, that talks about parenting. We're exploring doing a grandparenting mastermind, because I think there's a lot of grandparents that haven't figured it out, and we're stumbling through it. But we thought, well, we know maybe a little more than other grandparents, right? You don't have to know everything. I had a buddy, I think I may have shared this with you too, John Langford, went out to Colorado to help my buddy pastor that church. He was my worship leader. Oh, he's sung here before when we were in the old building in Clay. Anyway, he went out to Colorado, didn't have a job, and so he had been skiing for a little bit, and so he decided to apply for a ski instructor job for children because it was open on Vail Valley. And so he sits down and they ask him, well, what qualifies you? He says, I don't know everything, but I do know I ski better than most 5-year-olds. And so because he said that, they gave him that job. And he figured it out. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here. Listen, you don't have to have everything figured out. But you got talents, you got a basket, and there's something in it, right? And you know that. You got talents, you got gifts. And so here's the thing. Let's step. This is everything we're going to do. Take your resume first and figure out what it is you got. Second, you're always going to feel, and this is, I don't know how to say it any other way, you're always going to feel butt naked. You really are. You're always going to feel like, what am I doing? I feel like that every time I start to do stuff, right? I just feel like I don't know enough. I don't have enough. We got to figure this. You will never know enough, and you will never have enough. You never will. You just got to start where you are. And you got to be intentional, and you're going to trust that God's going to do with what you have bigger things than you can imagine, right? I've seen that in my own life. I've never known what I was doing. I always faked it till I made it, so to speak. Only God showed up, right? And so that's what has to happen. And then, so you're going to have to do the same thing. This is where we are, right? Let's just start where we are. Let's figure it out. And just trust Jesus. That's the message for today. And man, I'm excited about where we're going. I want I want to see y'all struggle in those things. Not that you're not already doing things. I just think it's important that we take stock of those things. So I'm going to pray for us. We're going to listen to a song, and then Mike's going to come, and we're going to celebrate Lord's Supper together.